And so with that said, I think this morning Manisha, I want to use what he said is to understand what happened. That's just the beginning. That's just the beginning. Because what we really wanted to know is what will happen, the predictive outcome, the prevention from what the disease could occur or what kind of accident could occur. So the key is what will happen, what could we do? So with that said, I really want to hear from Google Adam to give us his innovative thinking. And Waze is one of the huge social media data platform. I anticipate there will be a lot of new initiative, new feature will be added to that application. So let's give welcome to Adam.
Thank you, Dr. Song and Commander Song, and thank you to UCLA folks for having me. My name's Adam. I look after global partnerships for Waze. And just to kick things off, it would be great to get a show of hands. How many of you have heard of Waze before? Oh, wow. Okay, my job here is done. I'll see you guys later. That's great. How many of you have used Waze before? Okay. All right, well, stop me if this presentation is repetitive, but I thought I'd give a quick intro on what Waze is for the folks that don't know, but it's great to hear we're in warm hands. So Waze, we're the world's largest community of drivers, and we take crowdsourced information from our drivers on things that they are reporting on the road every day in real time. And we take this information because our mission is to outsmart traffic together. And how many of you who have used Waze hopefully have experienced the scenario that you can see right here? We call that the Waze magic in action there. And if you haven't used Waze, I would encourage it if you would love to experience something similar. So that's been our mission for a long time, is how do we work together as a community to outsmart traffic? And as I mentioned, we take all of these data points from our drivers, and we have over 80 million drivers using Waze around the world, and we crowdsource them in real time and allow our routing algorithm to use that data to make smart decisions about how to route you most efficiently from A to B. So that's all great, and that was our original mission. But now, recently we've started to think a little bit bigger. And we thought, okay, instead of outsmarting traffic together, how do we end traffic altogether? And I think we can all agree traffic is a really huge pain point. No one likes sitting in traffic. I sat in traffic on the way over here today, even though I was using Waze. I'll have some discussions with the engineers afterwards after this discussion today about that. But I think it's a big problem, and it's a much grander vision that I think we can all get behind, is how do we just remove this pain point from our lives? And so in order to think about that, we actually had to take a step back and think about things from a grander scale. Instead of working on an individual basis with individual drivers around the world, how do we work at the macro level? So this prompted us to create a program we called the Connected Citizens Program. And it's our partnership with cities and transportation authorities around the world to exchange information. And the purpose of this program is essentially twofold. The purpose for cities and transportation authorities is to use Waze as a conduit to reach their citizens and our users with real-time, relevant, up-to-date information with things like road closures, hazards that may be happening on the road, construction projects, all data that their citizens and our users can use to better plan their routes as well as drive more safely on the roads. And then in reverse, for us to provide real-time insights that are from our users that they're reporting on the road in real time, so they can make better informed traffic and congestion decisions, traffic management decisions, as well as better informed infrastructure level decisions as well. And these are all, the insights and the data points they get are things like crashes, hazards, vehicles stopped on the road, objects on the road, missing signs, potholes, roadkill. So how are we doing? So we started with 10 cities around the world about 2 years ago when we launched this program. And since that time, we've now grown to a community of over 250 cities and transportation authority partners around the world that are working with us through this program. And there are cities like Los Angeles, Mexico City, Rio de Janeiro, Jakarta, Sydney, Tel Aviv, Rome, Montreal, London, Barcelona. It's really become a global community of partners, and I think that's been one of the biggest benefits of the program as well, is not just necessarily this exchange of information between public and private, which is great in and of itself, but between the public partners themselves. And I'll give you a few examples of this coming up. But the program itself is growing extremely quickly. We're actually able to reach, if I could go back here a slide, about 1 billion people through these partnerships. We work with over 40% of top global cities, and over 50% of US departments of transportation are now working with us to exchange data through this program. We've also expanded the reach of who we're working with. So it's not just cities anymore. We're working with departments of transportation, emergency responders, tollway authorities, police departments, transit agencies. You know, every department within a city we want to reach and we want to work with in order to work together on this mission of ending traffic altogether. So that's all great, but I think we can all agree that data itself has been a buzzword of the last couple decades here, but it's really what you do with the data that counts. And so the purpose of this program, like I mentioned, if we want to end traffic altogether, we want to have a noticeable impact. So here's a quick example. In Jakarta actually analyzed our congestion data over a period of time to validate policy decisions that they were attempting to implement. So they actually used our data to validate that a odd-even license plate restriction, which means that you can only drive to certain areas of the city if you have an odd license plate, and other areas of the city if you have an even license plate, would reduce congestion and travel time. They actually used our data to prove that that policy reduced travel time by 19% across the city. Now, if you haven't been to Jakarta, that picture tells you all you really need to know in the background. It's hard to even walk in that city. That's a city of about 2 million commuters every day. So reducing travel time by 19% is a pretty amazing accomplishment. Another quick example, Rio. Rio actually worked with us around the Olympics, and they actually analyzed Waze data both pre, during, and post the Olympics. And before the Olympics even started, they realized they needed to embark on a number of major infrastructure projects, because they were projecting they were going to receive about 1 million additional people into a city that already had about 6 million people. So how do you manage that? So before the Olympics even started, they built 3 new highways based off our data, adjusted signal timing based off of our data, added additional lanes, and they were able to reduce congestion at peak commute times in the morning by 27% throughout the entire city. So another example of our data and this program actually having a meaningful impact in a city rather than just providing the data itself. So that's great, and those are just a couple examples of how we're working with cities and transportation authorities around the world. But something we really noticed as we started to work with these cities was there was another need out there, and that was the need for researchers and research institutions such as UCLA and the great folks here today to get access to this data to solve meaningful world problems. That can be congestion, that can be reduction in CO2 emissions, that can be reducing response time to accidents and crashes. But there was an intense need for this. And so from the overwhelming outreach that we had, and thank you UCLA folks for being part of that. They are persistent folks indeed, if you have not met them. We're really excited to announce a pilot program, and UCLA is one of our first partners to work with research institutions and researchers around the world to solve global problems using Waze data. And this is a quick description of how it works, and it's very similar to how the Connected Citizens program works with our partnerships with our cities. But we provide real-time, anonymous, Wazer-generated content to researchers who then can gain in-depth insights, use those insights to form research papers and case studies and publish them in peer-reviewed journals and solve real-world urban mobility challenges. And I think this is the next step towards ending not only traffic altogether, but a lot of the other problems we face as a society where Waze data can really contribute, and we're really excited about this. So we really encourage any researchers, research institutions out there to reach out to us and use your city as a research lab. So thank you so much. Appreciate the time. I'm going to hand it off.
Thank you, Adam. And I just downloaded Waze this morning. Very, very user-friendly. So we are quickly getting into the Q&A session. Before we get into that session, I just want to make final comments. I kind of look at them as a gold miner, because like Russ said, each department will have a piece of data somewhere we might not think is very powerful, useful, but by leverage academic, by leverage the subject matter expert, and those pieces of data could turn into the gold nugget for us. And also I want to thank Ross and Karen Johnson, because when we prepared the conference and they spotted this topic, spotted this project, spotted this case study, and they have their gold miners' eyes say this is something they really want to share with us. So thank Ross and Karen for your support. And with that, I want to open up for Q&A. So I think we have a microphone, right?
Okay, hi. Okay, I've got a microphone. I'm going to travel around the room. Raise your hand. We have about 7 minutes, and then that'll give you just enough time to run to your next session. So before I start taking questions, real quick, don't forget, after this next session, we're back in here with our expert panel. So make sure you don't miss that. By the way, all of you that are looking for data scientists,
Hi, I noticed something that was missing in one of your points. You're missing the education data, education of the user, the level of the education of the user, because if you don't know what the level of the education of the user is, you don't know necessarily what their background is, and that played into a point, that plays a major part in the point of your thing. That's just my comment.
from what perspective? From
Yeah.
me? You mean regarding the data types that are
Yeah, the data types is what I'm
Sure.
referring
So I think that would tie into, so for example, when Dr. Young comes to me and we're doing a study, for example, on HIV, we generally start with a certain demographic target, for example, high risk, individuals, who are at risk of, let's say, men seeking men between a certain age group, certain demographic type. So I agree with you that education is definitely a certain part of it. Literacy level and other things definitely play a role with it. I totally agree with you. Thank you very much for your comment. Absolutely.
Thanks so much. Great presentations all the way around. I was wondering if there are applications in this using big data in crime prevention more broadly. Violence prevention seems to be very similar to the understanding traffic patterns and prevention.
Checking it's on. Yes, absolutely. So, short answer, we have a paper under review of an analysis we just did, looking also at Twitter to be able to predict state-level violent crimes, and it's pretty surprising. I mean, I can't give too much of the specifics of the results because the academic process, as it goes through peer review, it needs to be evaluated. But preliminarily, it looks like the social data that we're using is actually a better predictor of crime than things like socioeconomic status and traditional indicators of crime. I wrote, I think it was sometime last year, a New York Times op-ed. There was one of these, Room for Debate it's called, where I'm making the point, there are a few of us, and we were talking about what is should social media be used, and should we be monitoring crime and using social data? Some people were for, some people were against, and we talk about the ethics of it, and that's something that you can check out where we give opinions on that. But it's definitely an area for, I think there's a lot that can be done for crime, because like I mentioned, there's drug use, there's drunk driving, there's all kinds of things that people are publicly sharing with the world.
So one thing I want to note, we've got time for one more question. For those of you that would like to talk to them in person, they are manning a booth out in the Solution Center, so make sure you stop by and ask them any of the questions you didn't feel comfortable asking to the entire audience.
So your research kind of shows you're looking at some really, heavy-duty health and safety issues. Have you also done some research with organizations or state entities regarding economic issues? Have you done that as well? Or I'm interested in, for example, migration. So when taxpayers move, what's the impact on the national economic state or the state economic state? Have you done that kind of research?
So just personally as a background, my PhD is in psychology, but I worked with health economists when I was in graduate school, and so we did a lot of economics-related work. I think we have done some work related to finance, prediction of finance and things like that. I think the one that comes to mind, just the top of my mind, was we recently wanted to collect ACA-related healthcare hashtags and see, could we, based on how people are tweeting, we started collecting that a month before the congressional vote, could we be able to predict results from voting? And so we have some data on that and are analyzing that. That's one that comes to mind. And we could definitely apply the same methods to a variety of different areas like economics and finance, absolutely.
So do you all have partners in associated programs that if they began to reach out, you could potentially connect them with fellows that are in different arenas that might be interested in partnering with California state or local government to begin exploring data?
Sure. I mean, I think that, for example, if someone, for example, was interested in doing research on doing predictions on a financial basis, let's say, for example, looking at home ownership trends or whatever, I think that it would be very easy for us to work on a pilot together. The first thing we would ask in this particular case is, could you provide some sample data that you're working with? Point us to some sample data that you're working with and tell us some problem areas where you're really suffering. And if we could start with that, I think we could start with a conversation. I can tell you that Dr. Young and I have, for example, looked at data types primarily on the health outcome side when it comes to housing data. We also have looked at data sets related to the stock market to try to see what you can do with predictions there. In part, that has to do with the fact that the stock market is very transparent. So there are excellent amounts of transparency when it comes to the stock market. There are EDGAR filings, there are SEC filings and reports, so it's easy to use that data to test out a tool. So that's what I like about financial data, is that there are a lot of controls. So it may be that we could work together if you had a specific data set.
And the other thing is that, it's not that there are 2 of us or 4 of us or 5 of us. At UCLA, there are probably 30 or so of us that are in this, and it's a University of California institute. So there's a site director at San Diego, at UCI, at Riverside, and we are spanning computer scientists, big data engineers, political scientists, people in education. So it's a broad reach, and we're interested in addressing important problems in the world, and so you come with a problem and you come with data, and we have the resources and expertise to be able to search for it.
I just want to say one thing, because on the economic side of things, it also relates to transportation data in a way, and something really interesting we did with the city of Los Angeles actually is we mapped pothole reports over income distribution, and actually found that the greatest concentration of potholes were in low-income neighborhoods throughout the city of Los Angeles. So we showed this data to the mayor of LA and said, hey, it looks like you guys are maybe neglecting your low-income neighborhoods and the streets and the infrastructure that's there. And he's now committed to repaving those streets over the next few years. So that data, when applied in the right way, can be really impactful from a transportation perspective as well as it relates to economics.
One of the things I'd just also like to add is that time and again when government agencies that I've gotten to know over the past few months have come to me and asked me, well, what kind of crowdsourced solution really exists that's out there where our citizens are likely to report some kind of problem? I consistently point to Waze, not only for reporting something on, just traffic related, but other things. And the reason why I say that is that while people are in their car, they just might be annoyed and willing to report something. So it may be not just a pothole, it may be some other issue as well. Sure. And so I think that my hope is that as a result of this, not only does CHP kind of open their mind to working with programs like Waze, but that Waze also opens their mind to providing more community service opportunities for volunteerism on the part of their users. So it's a two-way street, I hope.
So don't take everybody's like walking out as an insult. They're trying to get to their 2 o'clock class.
Yes.
So for those of you remaining, can you give them a round of applause?
Thank you.
That was excellent. That was some of the best information we've gotten yet. Thank you very much.